welcome to my channel. If this is your first time, welcome. Otherwise, some of you may be old subscribers. I have not posted anything in a very long time. I think it's been about a year, probably longer. So anyhow, I just had the thought that I kind of wanted to start a new series. Just basically talking about different stuff. Primarily, I think, talking about things that I may personally be going through or working with. A lot of times I've noticed that certain themes that people are working through and experiencing are fairly universal. A lot of us are going through a lot of the same sorts of situations right now. May not be playing out in the exact same way. Of course, we may be in really different places along our path. Just different stuff going on, different stages of evolution, growth, whatever, what do you want to call it. So anyhow, I just thought that I would get on here and make a video, talk about some of the stuff that I've been thinking of lately, working with. So today, right now, with this video, I want to talk about something that's been called by many different names, and whether they're all exactly the same thing, I don't know, but I tend to think that they're fairly similar, especially lately. So that is the ego, the inner child, the shadow. So lately I've been doing a lot of work on how to word it, like getting in touch with my inner self, being bold to start, or start a long time ago, but to really kind of take things to the next level as far as showing up in the world as my truer inner self, really removing some of those elements that are not really of me, a lot of them based on fear, past experiences, conditioning, expectations, all these sorts of things. So basically just going through and been doing a lot of work on removing those elements that are still present or were still present in myself, in how I show up, how I express myself, what I say, how I say it, how I relate to others, how I relate to the world, stuff like that. So in the last week or so, I've really been doing a lot of work on shadow work, really seeking to go and see these aspects of myself that I may not be aware of, aspects that may need healing, ways of being that just are not really, I guess, like aligned with who I am now and where I'm at now. Kind of like outdated, outmoded ways of being, ways of thinking, ways of perceiving life, my life, other people's lives, all of that. So in doing that, I've had some interesting experiences with, the working with the ego, had some interesting sort of inner child experiences, and I've been doing a lot of thinking about the subject. So a lot of times pretty much all religions are negative towards the concept of ego, or shadow even. Whether these are really the same thing, I don't know, but they kind of present in very similar ways. So the shadow is like the unseen aspect of the self. Oftentimes the aspects of ourself that we find unpleasant, unacceptable, needing to be controlled, needing to be kept hidden, these aspects of self. And a lot of times, what we think of when we think of ego is unpleasant as well. These aspects that are not considered acceptable. But they actually are both encouraged and denied in our society, at least in our Western society here in the US. We're very much encouraged to be self-sufficient, not emotional, not guided by our emotions, guided by logic and rationality. But then on the other hand, somebody that is too much of these things, too self-sufficient, too independent, too unemotional, all of these things, well, that's considered a negative. Egotistical, too self-centered, too focused on self. It's considered negative in our society. And yet we're also encouraged to be that. But too much, and you're going to experience I can't talk right now. Being ostracized, unaccepted, depending on your situation. So, I lost my train of thought. So basically, like that, what we think of as the shadow or the inner child or the ego is, typically considered to be bad in most schools of thought. Even a person that, is more of an atheist and not really open or interested in spiritual concepts, I'm sure that they have some concept, perhaps the ego. They may go the more kind of Freudian route of things. But in truth, I think I feel that I'm really starting to, through the help of some, various speakers that I've recently come across and my own internal introspection, I really do. I mean, and also for a long time, I've felt that the ego isn't something that should be killed or diminished or removed completely. I felt that for a very long time, that for whatever reason, this is part of who we are. This is part of our earth experience. It's there for a reason, and of course you may say, well, there's a difference between a healthy and an unhealthy ego. And yeah, I would say that's probably correct. But perhaps maybe it's, rather than saying healthy or unhealthy, balanced or imbalanced. So, perhaps we can experience a more balanced ego nature along with the other aspects of ourselves. But anyhow, I definitely am coming to a place of approaching that aspect of myself in a different way. So this way is more, this is basically learning unconditional love, true love, for that aspect of self. And that's another thing that I was kind of looking at and thinking about this week, of what really is unconditional love for self. I think it's oftentimes easy for us to, for some of us, it can be very easy to be unconditionally loving with others. And I don't really buy it. I don't really resonate with the concept that you have to be unconditionally loving with yourself before you can share that with others. It just does not jive. And the reason being is that, for myself at least, I can only speak for myself. Some of you may have had similar experiences, and that's why I'm making this video, by the way. Like, my channel is been hibernating for at least a year. I haven't posted anything. I haven't been feeling led to post anything really. I'm not really seeking to grow this channel that much. I don't really know, I'm not looking to really profit from this. I mean, that'd be cool, but that's not why I'm right here right now in this moment doing this video. I'm doing it because I felt led to make a video, and even if just one person sees this, even if it's 5 years from now, 3 years from now, a week from now, who knows? I don't know. But if it somehow helps you in any way, inspires you, leads you to start thinking about things a little differently, or just exploring new ways, I don't know, encourages you. Like a lot of times, I find videos at times where I just really need to hear something, or just be reassured that there are others out there that are experiencing a somewhat similar experience as I am. It can be really encouraging. So, in whatever way this helps, I hope it does. So, and feel free to comment if you have questions. I don't think YouTube really allows emailing anymore. Once upon a time you could email people, but I don't think that's the case anymore. But my website right now is defunct. I have not renewed the subscription, and I'm still deciding whether I'm going to build a new website or what I want to do there. But you can email me. I think it's okay. So the inneryou@gmail.com. So that's my YouTube, the inner you, and then at gmail.com. So moving on, where was I? So loving others. I definitely feel that sometimes some of us that have come into this life with a very loving nature, a very universally loving nature. So some of us have incarnated at this time, and we may have, naturally, in a sense, an extremely loving, caring, thoughtful type of nature. I feel that I have, that's the life I was born into. From my earliest memories, I remember being very concerned with how people were, their pain, their suffering, their stress, their concern, being 4 or 5 years old and really having these strong emotional responses to others. But also I was, raised in a very dysfunctional situation where, emotionally neglectful, that sort of thing. So, one could say, well, maybe that's a little bit of that sort of unhealthiness manifesting, but I don't think so. I think it's a combination. So here's the thing, talking about loving others. I definitely think that depending on the person, it is, of course, we can love others unconditionally, even if we're not loving ourselves in that same way. And I think this is very much present in those that have experienced difficulties, especially on the emotional arena. Emotional neglect, emotional abuse, emotional manipulation, all these sorts of things. If you experience these sorts of things over time, even just once, I don't know, certain situations can be so traumatic to an individual that it changes who they are at that point. And certainly people that experience chronic over time, whether it be in a family or a relationship or whatever, even society, may be that way with certain individuals at times. So I think that through these types of experiences, it's very understandable that sometimes people forget how to love themselves. They forget they're able still to be very much emotive with others. They're able to feel that for others, express that to others, share that with others, and they over time have forgotten how to do it for themselves. So it gotten to the point for myself where logically in my mind I felt that I just didn't know, well, what does that mean? What does that mean to be that for yourself? To unconditionally love yourself? And that may seem really, I don't know, to me it seems like it would be a no-brainer, really obvious. And, you know, there's been times over in recent, you know, in the past where I've thought, well, I'm just going to treat myself like I treat others. Easier said than done. You know, like at what point on what things do you do this? So it's been something I'd, you know, really worked with over years, just kind of discovering, what does that mean for me? What does that look like? What is it like in the experience, you know? And realized this week that, realized that one of the, a key aspect of it that was missing for me that I've recognized now, and kind of like a game changer with that, is unconditional love ultimately is not so much accepting as far as saying like that's okay or I like that, not that type of accepting, but just accepting. By the way, I'm sitting like in a rocking chair, so if I'm wiggling around, that's what that is. Accepting more in the sense of just that's okay that you feel that way, or that's okay that you are that way. Not in a condoning sort of way of like, I like that and I want that to continue, but just it is what it is. Rather than trying to control that part of self, change it, heal it even. Because the concept of healing is that something is diseased. And while that part of ourselves may be hurt, I guess, or maybe there as a result of some sort of emotional hurt, we can recognize that it is what it is. And rather than trying to silence it, that's a big one for me. Instead of trying to silence it, allow it to express itself. Allow it to exist. Give it permission to exist. And not seek to change it. Just allow it to be as it is. For me, that's definitely a big part of how I experience unconditional love with others. Seeing them for who they are, where they are, how they are, and loving them as they are. It doesn't mean that I don't sometimes see ways that people are undermining themselves or responsible in a sense for some of the experiences that they're having, and the blind spots. That's a big one. You know, I definitely see the blind spots. And sometimes it's really hard to communicate those even when someone is asking for it, because they're blind spots. A lot of times we don't want to see those. But eventually we usually do at some point. But it's usually from our own recognition of it, not from someone else telling us about it. It's a very, you know, it's a interesting sort of thing. So, I mean, I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm probably not going to edit this, just going to go with it as a one shot. So yeah, if any of you have been working with, you know, inner child work, shadow work, ego work, whatever, I hope that perhaps this experience that I've had perhaps can help you in some way. I'm a big experimenter with life and with spirituality, as far as you know, it's one of those things in life that you can try out. You can try different aspects. You can try different ways of doing things, looking at things, experiencing things. And a lot of times you really don't have a whole lot to lose by doing so. So perhaps you may feel led to experiment with just accepting certain parts of yourself. Not condoning necessarily, but just accepting that it's there. And interestingly enough for myself, like, it does seem, for my experience so far, is that the more I do this, the quieter those aspects get. So the less in the forefront, the less they really make themselves present. So it's really interesting that you may have these aspects of yourself that are essentially screaming to be heard. And you may have been silencing them for years. And when you finally listen, they start being quiet. One other thing I just wanted to share, interestingly, I had this interesting dream the other day. I'm big on dreams, and for a long while, last, I don't know, 6 months or so, I really hadn't had a very active dream life, but my dream life has really picked up speed lately. I had a dream. I had a very difficult night a few nights back. You know, one of those nights where you just cry out to the universe to send somebody or something, or, you know, just some sort of a help or assistance. You know, a cheerleader, a spiritual vitamin, something to help you continue on your path. And that night I ended up having 2 dreams, both about family members that have passed on in this past year. One with my dad, who just died a couple months ago, and one with my grandma, who died in January. 2 people in my life that had been a fairly constant source of unconditional love for me. Not always perfect, you know. It wasn't always perfect, and there was plenty of dysfunction thrown into the mix, but for where we came from and who we were, they were some of the most loving people in my life growing up and as an adult. But anyhow, so these are the people that showed up that night that I called out for help. I ended up having a dream about each of them. With my dad, I was just at his house visiting with my kids, and he was there, and he didn't talk at all. He was just standing there smiling the whole time. No matter what room we were in, what we were doing, he was just standing off to the side. It wasn't until we were leaving his house, driving off, that I remembered that he had passed. And then I started wondering if I was the only one that had seen him on that visit, or if my daughters had seen him as well. But I mean, he just looked really happy. He was smiling, but he didn't talk at all. And then in the second dream, La La Land. In the second dream, I actually didn't see my grandma, but her the idea of her was in the dream. So I was at a church, and everybody there was Black. It was a multi-generational group of people, and they were like a congregation, but it was very small. So it was like maybe 10, 15 people, right? But this little room with them in it. And I was in there, and I was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, and they were all around me. And there was an older man sitting on a table at the front, just kind of like halfway sitting, halfway standing, and kind of like talking to us and addressing us. And I asked, or somebody asked who I was, something like that, and they said, "Oh, this is so-and-so's granddaughter," my grandmother. And they're like, oh, like as soon as they knew that that was my grandma, they're like, oh yeah, you are welcome here, and we're so happy to have you here. And you know, and I asked, well, how do you know my grandma? And they said, oh, well, like she founded this place, or she started this church or this community. There is something about how she had like started that group. So it's kind of interesting. I have no idea like what that kind of represents, as far as like, you know, everybody there being black. Like, I don't know, my grandmother wasn't really, as far as I'm aware, super involved in any sort of like racial justice movements. My grandparents on my other side, on my dad's side, were, but on my mom's side, not that I'm aware of. But you know, I don't know. It was cool though. I've always personally felt very at home and comfortable in, you know, black communities, black families, maybe past life connection, I don't know. But anyhow, so I'm sitting there on the floor and they're all around me. And I guess we were having a conversation. We were talking about stuff, and oh yeah, there was this little kid that like a 10-year-old or something, that was talking about something hard that they had gone through recently, and they were like, yeah, when it happened, I was like, eh. And then I said something like, oh yeah, sometimes in life I really feel like and everybody started laughing. Like, we were belly laugh, like just laughing so hard, like tears coming out of our eyes because we were laughing so hard. Around this time, I realized that I was holding this girl. So interestingly enough, I don't know why like ethnicity was so strong. Maybe because I'm also working a lot on healing things that are from heredity, like genetic stuff that the families we are born into, the habits and the stuff that we take on that isn't ours. Maybe that's why that was so prominent. And so, but this girl that I was holding was about 5 years old, and she was Asian. And she had she had black hair, she had like a little black bob, bangs. I was holding her and she was like laying on my lap, and I was kind of like holding her like a baby, but you know, she's like a 5-year-old, like her legs were sticking off of me, and I'm sitting cross-legged on the floor surrounded by all these people. And so I remember I was holding her when I was saying like, oh yeah, sometimes life makes me feel you know, and everyone started laughing. And then as the laughter was kind of dying down, like I just suddenly was hit by a very strong wave of emotion, sadness, you know, but kind of like a bittersweet sadness, you know, not sadness so much like depression sadness, but just a very strong feeling of just feeling the emotion of sadness. And I remember like thinking to myself, like, this is so nice and wonderful, and surrounded by all these people, and there was a lot of love in the room, just felt a lot of love. And then we had this great laugh together, and just like connection, just really great connection. And then I think that in that moment I did start to think a little bit about my dad, perhaps, because I do remember having a big strong feeling of like allowing myself to grieve a little bit, allowing myself to feel that sadness from that loss. And then looking at the little girl in my lap, who I really had no idea where she belonged, because, you know, she clearly was not the child of any of these people in this room. She wasn't my child, you know, or so I thought, you know. But I just felt this overwhelming sense of love and very strong emotion, and I, I leaned down and I gave her a kiss right on the top of her forehead right here. And she said something like, "What's that for?" And I was like, "Well, just because I love you." And 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 it was interesting because the other thing in that experience was when I was crying, when I was feeling the tears and the sadness, I remember like trying to squash it, trying to say that, like, this isn't the appropriate time to feel this. I'm surrounded by all this love. I'm surrounded by like this immensely loving community of people. And we were laughing, we are connecting, we are having a good experience. And that, like, feeling like it was wrong for me to be feeling those feelings of sadness in that moment. But also this element of like, well, if you can't allow yourself to experience this in this dynamic, then when will you? Or, if you can't allow yourself, like, if there ever was a place to be able to experience that freely, that was it, so that even while sleeping, even while having this experience with these people that I didn't know, but who accepted me and loved me and embraced me, I was essentially surrounded, just embraced me. And yet was, trying to censor myself, trying to censor my emotions, trying to tell myself that I shouldn't be crying, that I shouldn't be feeling that I shouldn't allow myself to feel that and express it. Like the tears were what was the issue, So, and I do remember, I think that some of the people, I know the little girl asked me why I was crying. But I don't remember like what exactly I said. It's a little bit hazy. But I think I woke up shortly after that. The next day when I was thinking about those dreams, I really did feel like that little girl was like my inner child. And, they say sometimes it can be very beneficial to envision holding your inner child on your lap, or holding them like a baby, cradling them like you would a child. Well, not often, but have sometimes also heard that, the inner child tends to kind of show up as around a 5-year-old. So I've heard that as well, especially recently. So I don't know why my inner child is Asian. I don't know. I definitely feel a connection to some other lives in Mongolia, so maybe that's what that is. Also Japan, so yeah, genetic healing. I think that's another big thing a lot of people right now are working on. I've seen, at least synchronistically, a lot of videos, readings, lectures, teachings. A lot of these things have been in my line of vision this week, and a lot of them are very current. A lot of them are, not from a long time ago. These are current readings, current videos. So that tells me that probably a lot of us right now are healing the genetic things that we hold on to. And when I first started hearing about genetic healing, or the need, something that is in need or ready to be released, or healed, balanced, what have you, I was immediately thinking of things like, cells, like DNA. And so I did a little bit of work with that, but it didn't like really resonate with me until the realization that it can also be the things we take on from our family history, the sins of our fathers, the dysfunction in our family, the dysfunctional cycles, and how they can perpetrate in various ways. They can mutate. they can become slightly different, but it's still the same story. So kind of healing and releasing these things has been really big for me this week, and perhaps has been for a lot of you as well. We're on December 3rd, 2020 right now when I'm filming this. So, you know, if that's something that you've been working on, you know, there are others, a lot of us working on it. And there's a lot of different talk out there about different, you know, reasons why, but ultimately, you know, it doesn't have to be for any specific reason why, other than you're ready to be working on that right now. You're ready to be healing it. I mean, one of the big reasons why, obviously, is so that you can start showing up as your true self more and more. You know, a lot of when we hear about awakening, enlightenment, all of these sorts of things, it's a process. You know, it's not a one-time event. You may have one-time kind of like catalyzing events that lead to epiphanies and breakthroughs and kind of set you on a new path. But it is a process. It's an ongoing process. And you know, you may have multiple experiences like that. Existential crises, dark nights of the soul, you know, all of these things can be part of that. So, but if any of you are working on or having the concept of like hereditary healing, genetic healing, family healing coming up for you, then I definitely encourage you to explore that. You know, kind of see what comes up for you. See, one thing like I've been doing, because I don't really like to like try to tell other people what they should be doing. If anything, my main approach is to share what I've been going through and how I've been working through things. And if that inspires you and helps you find ways of working with yourself, and I'm sorry, I'm really thirsty. My water ran out. If it somehow helps you in some way to be more of who you are, then great. That's my goal, is to help you be you. That's why my channel is the inner you. You know, the tree, the you, is very magical and strong, and but also, you know, you. My goal in any type of spiritual work or emotional healing work, or just connecting with other humans, like regular conversation, ultimately is to help you be you. Just like I'm working on me being me. You know, we all individuate into our bodies in this lifetime for different reasons. And ultimately, if we are allowing ourselves to, if we are limiting ourselves by allowing conditioning and expectation to rule our life and rule where we go and how we are, if that's what's ruling us, then we're not really allowing our souls to express themselves in the way they came here to express themselves. So right now, a lot of us are at a place where we are really working to remove these remnants of conditioning, these remnants that are not ours. We have no reason to keep them. Zero. There's zero reason to hold on to that. And I mean, of course, my mind starts going into places of like, well, what about, you know, these sorts of things. I start getting into like, you know, criminal stuff and all of that. Like, but, you know, ultimately I feel that a lot of that stuff stems from pain. So, I mean, if everybody is, or if more people are loving themselves more, hearing themselves, really hearing, listening to themselves, loving those aspects within, that we would have less of those types of criminal, destructive behaviors. That's just my personal view. I do feel that, you know, those things stem from unresolution. You know, like, obviously something is needed that's not there. You know, ultimately we have everything we need within us, but experience and such and circumstance can put us in situations where we forget that. We just forget how powerful we really are, and then we feel victimized. And then a victim is either going to become, or going to continue as a victim, they're going to become a perpetrator, or they're going to become a healer. That's what I've seen. I mean, maybe there's a fourth option out there, but that seems to be basically the options available. So, these people that are perpetrators, in one way or another, they have been victims. All of them. Maybe not in huge ways. Maybe sometimes what we think is a smaller way. I really hadn't planned for the video to go this way. But anyhow, I do feel that. But how we choose to respond to our experiences is, and I really don't want to say, that starts getting into really, that's really not where I was planning on going with this video. Because, we do the best we can. So I'm certainly not trying to say that, putting any... I'm not trying to shame anyone into thinking that they are, that they made the choices they did. But ultimately we do. And, but that's just part of our experience, We're not here to be perfect, really. That's not what humanity is about. That's not what being human is about. We're here to experience the experience of being a human. Being a human includes having to keep a human body alive. This is the reason the ego pretty much exists, is to keep us alive. So I did want to touch on that briefly, that, if you have any struggles or thinking about if you're struggling to let go of that idea that the ego or the shadow is bad or something that needs to be healed or fixed, like in our child work, then perhaps take a look at the perspective that these things exist to keep us alive, to keep our bodies alive. So when those aspects become kind of a bit out of balance, perhaps taking roles that they don't really need to take, or taking control of things that they don't really need to control, then this is oftentimes because there were situations where a person felt endangered in various ways. It can be physically, emotionally, otherwise. There's multiple ways that a person can feel in danger. And so that aspect of ourself steps in to provide some level of security. So, these aspects, we do need to stay alive in our human bodies to, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be incarnated, or we'd be a tree, or we'd be a rock, or a frog, or a dog, I'm not saying that those beings are not doing their work too, because they are. They're in their physical presence, because that physical presence does the trick for what they want to experience, or what they come to contribute, or what have you, So, but for us that are in human bodies, it is the human body that is the vehicle that allows us to literally embody what we came here to embody. So the ego is necessary to keep that body alive. Maybe at some point the ego can become, more quiet in a sense, more peaceful or restful, because, and being able to really be aware of true danger, true need to be aware and wake up and say, okay, be aware of this, like a more balanced ego. So, but for most of us are dealing with something out of balance in that area. Lots of reasons. Look at the society we live in. We've really moved away, and I'm sure other cultures and times have as well. We're not that different from a lot of different ancient cultures in a lot of ways, as far as the way our society is, the way we are, what we value, that sort of stuff. Very similar, it's been pretty much this for 2,000 years at least. So, you know, but we all, you know, most of us, I'm not going to say we all, because I'm sure there's some that maybe not, but most of us are dealing with some sort of imbalance in the ego area or the shadow area. And most of us are not listening to those parts of ourselves. And a lot of us in the spiritual community, the New Age community, star seeds, light workers, rainbow children, crystal children, you know, people that are awake, you know, this group has just as much of the struggle to accept and love themselves as they are as any other group, and perhaps in an even more nefarious way, because, you know, then you're combining spiritual truths with diminishing and denying experience, denying self. And isn't it interesting that a lot of religions, organized religions throughout the years, do talk about the denial of self, the denial of the material, the perfection of the spiritual, and the denial of the material. You know, that's a very old concept, very old, and it's pretty much predominant. I mean, I can only really think of a couple religious groups that are not so much focused on that. But yeah, I mean, this is a material world, and I'm a material girl, Taurus. Anyhow. But yeah, we are living in a material world. It's a physical world. We are in physical bodies. And, you know, we have our spirit, we have our consciousness, our awareness, you know, but we are also experiencing a physical world. So, you know, can't throw the baby out with bathwater. So, anyhow, I hope that this video was somehow helpful to you, and it was enjoyable speaking with you. Like, I don't know who's going to see this when. So whoever you are, wherever you find yourself, I wish you all the best. I really do. I'm a big believer that people find videos and media and whatever, friends, partners, work, whatever. I do feel that we find these things and these opportunities when it's just perfect timing. I believe in divine timing. So whoever it is that's seeing this video, I really do wish you all the best. And if you have any questions, you know, feedback, input, whatever. I'm not really looking to make things fancy. I mean, not right now, at least. I'm just sitting in my room, no makeup on. So, you know, not really interested in like technical feedback. Get some better lighting, get a better microphone. Hopefully as is good enough, because this is what it is for today at least. So wish you all the best, sending you much love, universal love to you, and hope you have a really wonderful day or evening wherever you are. Take care. Bye-bye.